And when we get Tim Brando, Fox Sports, on the show to talk about many things, and today quite a bit. But Tim, we thought about you. We had the author John Lucas on the show who wrote the book about Beano Cook, and he said Tim Brando can probably say unbelievable better than anybody other than Beano. And it's been a while. We're glad to have you. You knew Beano about as well as anybody, correct?
Yeah, I did. And I mourn even today at the loss of Beans. And actually, fellas, I was on the air doing the old Tim Brando show from our studios that was televised at that time on CBS Sports Network, as well as on Sirius XM at mid-morning when I got word of Beano's passing. And he had just been on the show like a week earlier. And I knew he wasn't doing well, but I just wasn't ready. And that's the only time, I can tell you, it's the only time in my 5 decades on television that I ever lost it on the air. And I was in the middle of a segment, and I saw my guys, my producer Dave Druta, through the window, my guys in the box, as I used to call them, and I could see that something was really, really wrong. And then we went to a commercial break. They came in and told me, and I couldn't gather myself. I had a good, 2.5 to 3 minutes to regather to talk about it, and I just lost it. I just lost it, and it's the only time that ever happened. I love the man, and he was one of those guys that crossed through my life, that's path crossed through mine, quite by chance. When we started College Gameday in late 1986 and cranked up Gameday in the fall of '87 as the original Gameday cast with Lee Corso and Kerry Ross, who was our reporter, who is married to Dave Dombrowski, the baseball man, who's been a general manager for a number of teams, most recently I think the Tigers and the Washington team now, I believe. Carrie was from Oklahoma and a Sooner, and she was a big-time college football family girl from that part of the country. And we had a hell of a group, to start that thing, and it was a lot of fun. And Beano, without Beano, there would have been no Game Day, pure and simple. I mean, without him, there is no College Game Day. The vision that the then head of ESPN, Steve Bornstein, had for College Game Day was through Beano Cook. And I must tell you, my memories of those days with ESPN are tremendous. I've told many people there when asked about my time at ESPN. There's a whole generation that doesn't even know I worked there. I tell them that was the most exciting time of my career. We did a lot of great things. For the very first time, we changed the paradigm of sports television viewing, I think, in the mid-'80s at that place. And Game Day was Bornstein's vision, but it was through Beano that he had that vision. Just as Beano worked through Roone Arledge at ABC in the 60s and 70s. It was the same sort of thing as cable television was taking off. I don't think that they being ESPN, have done a service that they should to John's book, because John was working with Beano there as sort of a personal assistant for him, but also with ESPN. And I wish they had done a little more promotion of this book, because once you pick it up and you start reading it, it's as though Beano is talking to you from heaven. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's that, and the book is very complimentary of ESPN. It's not, I mean, he cuts to the chase. He tells the truth. Sometimes the truth can be a little ugly, but for the most part, I think it's a complimentary book where ESPN is concerned. And I don't know why they haven't, with all the resources they have, I don't know why they haven't promoted the book any more than they have.
Tim, when Smokey told me that we were going to have John on the show, my first thought was, my gosh, wouldn't the college football world love to hear from Beano just this last year? I mean, it would be unbelievable.
Yeah, because no one has his perspective. And Beano would always cut through the minutia of, in today's world, you guys may think I'm candid, and that's fine. You have me back from time to time to talk about issues. But regardless of what I say, there will always be, from today's fan base, there will be this presumed bias that they believe I have because of where I work. Now, I think you guys know different, and I believe the people that know me well know different. But in Beano's case, even though he was at ESPN at that time, Beans would be as critical of where he worked as he was of any other place that was covering college sports. You know, he was an equal opportunity offender, and I think everyone understood that, and that's one of the reasons why I believe that the likes of guys like of him and people from his background, we won't see the likes of him ever again. Just like we never will see another Howard Cosell because of the different place where he was in terms of his background before coming to television. Beano was far more likable than Howard, but he was no less glib. He was absolutely cutting right to the chase all the time and didn't care who he pissed off. And, from an old publicist and newspaper man, which is what he was when he began, combination of those two, and then going into TV, his programming acumen is what helped put college football on the map in the 60s and 70s when I was a baby, moving the Arkansas-Texas game, the game of the century, the first one really, in 68. That was him. He did that. Rune Arledge listened to Beano Cook because, not many guys in New York that were in sports television were that close to the college game. And the ace in the hole for Arledge and ABC Sports in those early days of television was Beano Cook.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports with us, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. What are your thoughts about the LIV PGA Tour? And obviously, very quickly, here you are all of a sudden at Brookline with the U.S. Open. Some guys have said quite a bit, and some haven't really helped themselves at all.
I think that the story would be much different were it not for Phil's mistake, made months ago. Mm-hmm. And with Shipnuck in his book. And I think that there's this really huge cloud over Phil in particular, and because of it, it gets to LIV Golf too, in large measure, because all the attention is on Phil. And there's going to be an additional book that Mickelson, I'm aware of, knows about, and it's going to be even more tawdry than what's already out there. And this book is the Billy Walters book. If you've kept up with sports gambling, you know that Billy Walters is without question the most successful in maybe history. Musburger did an interview with him not long ago on his network on VSiN. If you have a chance to Google it, take a look at it. You can to know more of who I'm talking about. He was put away in federal penitentiary for 3 years, and according to many sources, Mickelson could have very easily testified and gotten his sentence reduced. He chose not to. And now Walters is collaborating with Armin Katayan, the outstanding reporter and author from CBS and CBS News. I used to work with Armin. They're collaborating on a book, which according to a number of people, will make it look even worse for Phil. And that's another thing to keep an eye on. But as it relates to the PGA and what's at work here, and the Saudi money that's out there that is clearly limitless. I mean, the amounts of money that they have is a limitless, bottomless pit of cash. And for the younger players that have opted to take this money, by example, what was it? 1.8 million won by Rory at the Canadian Open. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the winner in London, Schwartzel, banked over 5 million. Okay, in a 54-hole event with no cut and a lot less competition, about half the size of the tournament that was played in Canada was the size of this one. So, if you're offering younger players, guys like Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson, who I think is, in his 30s now. If you're offering these guys that kind of money just to show up, and that will free up so much more of their time to be with their children and whatnot, I get it. I do. Their legacies may be in jeopardy to some extent, because who's to say that World Golf will rank these guys if they're playing in tournaments of that size that are only 54 holes and only have somewhere between 35 to 45 participants. I don't know. That'll be something to watch. But the truth is, Mickelson's legacy is set. Anybody that's telling you that Phil Mickelson's legacy is in jeopardy, forget that. That Mickelson is, other than Tiger Woods, in the last 30 years, who's been bigger for the game of golf than Phil Mickelson? That said, if you watched his presser in London and you watched the one yesterday at Brookline, it was sad. It was sad. Mm-hmm. It was really sad, particularly for people that knew Phil when he was young, as I did, and respect Phil as I do. He looked like a guy that was not in command of his game. He has always been good, bad, or indifferent, whether you're a fan of Phil's or not. He always seemed like if there were issues there, he was Teflon. It didn't bother him. He could get through it. Yesterday, he was dismissive. He was defensive. He was all the things that he never was before. So he clearly is at odds with himself about the circumstances he finds himself in, whether it's LIV Golf that he's not proud of or himself that he's not proud of. I don't know. But I do know that he doesn't appear happy to me. All the money that they can, $200 million just to show up, will not buy you happiness, and he does not look happy. And his press conferences the last 2 weeks did not improve. It's unfortunate. I do think the game of golf is going to suffer because we're going to lose. When you start talking about DeChambeau and you talk about Mickelson and you talk about DJ and so many others, I think Ricky Fowler's talking about it now. Patrick Reed's already gone. It'll be very rare, maybe at U.S. Opens and the Open Championship, maybe the only time that we see the top 20 all together on the same course at the same time. And that's not good. That's not good for the game of golf. But I can't tell you that the PGA is not without fault or that they don't need to adjust. And I will tell you that I think the PGA would be in trouble if they go to court, because I don't know that they want to test antitrust laws in this country with regard to independent contractors that feel like they've earned the right to play on two different tours. So it's a very complex issue, without a doubt. And it has changed the sports economics in this country and specifically in golf. And I think the only thing we could compare it to is when they had that battle with Indy cars and Formula One and remember all that?
Yep.
What it did to auto racing? It's about the only thing I can compare it to, really.
Yeah, Tim, it would seem to make sense to me for the PGA to make some concessions and give back a little of that money, especially, caddies and travel and things like that.
Right.
Right. They can't, match the Saudi money because nobody can. They're sitting on all that oil and everything else over there, but they could at least make it to where it's not as attractive for somebody to go and take the flack of, where is your money coming from? And that's the really only big conflict with LIV Golf is, you're taking a lot of money, but who's giving it to you?
Yes, absolutely. And here's the other thing that's problematic for me. And again, I'm being critical of Phil. Phil disappointed me, but I also understand from a business point of view where he's coming from. But he's getting drilled, fellas. I mean, he is getting absolutely drilled in ways that heads of state are never questioned. Okay? I mentioned this on Twitter just a little bit earlier today. The sad irony of what we've witnessed. And by the way, all those questions, they were all tough and they were all deserved. Mickelson, in my opinion, had to navigate through just a number of bows and arrows coming his way from the media, but they were all fair. They were fair questions. Yet, where is the news media with regard to the President of the United States who is willing to go to the Saudis as well as Iran to get more oil into this country. Think about that for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Has the President of the United States been grilled quite like a golfer on the LIV Tour? I don't think so.
No, he hasn't, Tim.
Our actors and athletes get held to higher standards than our politicians, and that's just sad.
That's the sad irony. The sports media is more objective and a hell of a lot more assertive than the news media today.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports, joins us. It has been a regular with us, and we're proud of that and appreciate that as well on Sikkim 365 Radio.
Tim, do you have any solidified thoughts on how you want to see the SEC schedule out over the next few years as they go through this pod discussion and everything else that comes with that?
I think it's absolutely the most incredulous conversation of the silly season of college football. I mean, really. So we're just gonna this whole notion that they're allowing to float out there. Well, we're just gonna pick up our stuff and go have our own national championship. We may just play each other, and that's that. What? And as it relates to where you're going to go with the schedule, you're not going to go anywhere with the schedule until you get Texas and Oklahoma in, and I don't see that happening until 24 by the earliest, and more than likely 25. Okay. If they don't go to 9 games, then, but why wouldn't they stay at 8 games? They've gotten away with it to this point. So why go to 9 anyway? You know, why go there if you don't have to? The conference has gotten away with whatever it's wanted. They've gotten away with through the entire college football playoff era, and you know they're going to do whatever they want to do. I just think it's a non-story in my mind. The Big 12, to me, we don't know who the commissioner is going to be. I wish they'd get on with that, so that we can, with everything else that's going on. I think they need to go ahead, and if they know who their man is or their woman is. If it's Condi Rice, God bless them. Go get somebody, okay? But the Big 12, in my mind, is the newsmaker right now, and yet all we're talking about is the SEC.
Yep. What
the Big 12 did in getting the teams that they've gotten to join BYU and cut that $18 million payout with Mike Oresco and the AAC to get those teams in by 23 is going to make the Big 12, I think, without question, in the future, the third highest paid conference for television rights. And even though Oklahoma and Texas will not be part of the next TV deal, financially, during the negotiations, they'll have those 2 teams. And with the extension of teams in what will be for at least a couple of years a 14-team conference, my God, the games are going to be through the roof good. So they're going to be negotiating for a television deal from a position of power, even though they're losing their 2 biggest guns, you know, in Texas and Oklahoma. I think we talked about this before, fellas. BYU plus those teams from the American Conference, that's a hell of a replacement. No, it's not Oklahoma and Texas. Those are really good teams to be bringing in when you measure them against everyone not known as the Big Ten and the SEC. As for the Southeastern Conference, they don't really care about what Texas and OU does. Those are issues that those 2 schools have to navigate. And whether it's Oklahoma that doesn't want to pay the money any more than Texas, I don't think either one makes a move without the other. Even if Texas wants to get out more quickly, and frankly, if I'm Sarkisian, I'm going to my president and I'm going to Del Conte, the AD, and say, for God's sakes, let's put a good face on, but let's stay the hell away from the SEC until 2025. We got a lot of work to do, even with NIL.
Tim, how many College World Series have you broadcast?
I did 7 in my 9 years at ESPN between 1985 and 94. I was a dugout reporter in 85, which was so much fun. That was the Greg Elena 3-home run championship with, he knocked out Mississippi State, you might recall, with Palmero and Will Clark and Brantley and Bobby Thigpen and all those guys. Came back in '86, the Ben McDonald walk-off home run by Paul Carey of Stanford. I moved into the booth that year, worked with Jim Cott, Joe Morgan, Freddie Lynn, Larry Sorensen, Steve McCaddy. Great partners that I had there. It was just a blast. And I will tell you, as much as I loved, and I said earlier, my most exciting period in many ways in my career was my earliest days at ESPN. The event that I still miss the most, that I'm not part of any longer, is the College World Series. And I think anybody that ever worked it would tell you that it's the most undervalued event, national championship event, most undervalued by the NCAA and by television in many respects. But it's also the most fun and the one you want to go back to the most often.
What do you think of the field this year?
Oh, it's magnificent. And for Tennessee not to be there, and yet they got 4 teams out of the SEC in, and 3 out of those 4 had to win on the road in the Supers. I mean, my God, that was incredible. I thought last weekend, I don't know about you guys, as much as the golf was being discussed, both the LIV golf as well as the Canadian Open, and you got the NBA Finals going on. It was college baseball that had my attention.
Yep.
I mean, it really was. From what Notre Dame was pulling off to that incredible Magnolia State rivalry, which was bigger than anything they've ever had in the state of Mississippi, with Ole Miss, Big Brother having to go play, the directional school down in Hattiesburg. That was those tickets were going for major bucks there. I mean, major bucks. Then Arkansas pulling off what they did against North Carolina, and then A&M, really the only one at home that had a draw that you said, okay, they should be in pretty good shape, and they took care of business. But it's just going to be a hell of a lot of fun. The thing that really gives college baseball, I think, difficulty, though, is these supers are all played at home fields, and most of them are bandboxes. In the old days, when we were playing at Rosenblatt with the wind blowing out towards left field in every game, you were going to have, a lot of excitement offensively. A lot of 10-8, 12-11. Back in those days, Oklahoma State was really good. Gary Ward had great teams with Ian Cavilla. They were in that 85 when I was telling you about. Robin Ventura was on a team later. I think it was like the 87, 88 team with Monty Ferris. I remember those teams really, really well. But you had a lot of offense in those games. And now with TD Ameritrade in downtown Omaha, it's a big-time feeling. It's a wonderful ballpark. It's been great for the city and commerce in Omaha, Nebraska. But the stadium is not a hitter's ballpark the way Rosenblatt was. And the game changes now. A lot of these home runs that we're watching over the weekend in these bandboxes like in Knoxville, Tennessee, those are simple can of corn pop-ups into shallow left, at this ballpark. And so you're going to see a lot more 2-1, 3-2 pitchers duels, not the gorilla ball that maybe we've seen up until this point.
Tim, I know you've got things to do. We got to move on as well. What is the best golf course you've ever played?
Man, that's a tough one. The two that everybody says, oh, you have played the Masters. I did. I was supposed to play the Monday after the Masters, and it rained. That was after the one Bubba won, the one that he won in a playoff. So I didn't get to play it, but I will play it before long. I've not played Pebble, even though I've been to Pebble. I wasn't playing golf when I was there. It was in the 80s. I'd have to say Oak Tree. It would either be Oak Tree in Edmond, Oklahoma, or Pinehurst, number 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Those would be my two favorites that I've played of all of them. Marion in Philadelphia, by the way, is outstanding. I love playing that one. In inner city Philly, that's a great spot. But an Olympic Club is incredible too. I played it. But I'd have to say Pinehurst, number 2. Donald Ross, and with the update that was done by Pete Dye, it's got to be probably number 1. And I'd put Oak Tree number 2.
Hey man, we appreciate you as always, Tim. Thanks for your time. Appreciate the insight on many things.
You got it, fellas.
Thank
Anytime. You know that.
Yes,
we'll
sir. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us almost once a month, sometimes even a couple of times a month. Great to have him on at any time, also during college football season.
I was just thinking about the first